Adventures in Gauffering. Gauffering is a bookbinding technique in which heated tools are used to imprint patterns onto the gilded or painted edges of a book. It was most popular in the 16th and 17th centuries, with a revival in the 19th century. I don't have the knowledge or materials required to gauffer traditionally, so I'm going to show you how I did it on a budget. For materials, I used cardstock, every grit of sandpaper between 80 and 2000, a dust mask or respirator, heat-activated foil, clamps, Renaissance wax, acrylic ink, and a brass finishing tool with a wooden handle. The use of brass is important because it conducts heat quickly and evenly, and the wood of the handle prevents you from, burning your skin off. With all of my supplies gathered, it's time to begin. In order to successfully paint and gauffer a text block, it needs to be sanded until it has a mere finish. Any less and you run the risk of your paint and foil cracking and flaking. After putting on my very important respiratory safety mask, I started at 80 grit and worked my way up to grit 2000. My text block was too big to guillotine, so this took me about 5 hours. This was the dust collected from a couple minutes of sanding. Seriously, you do not want this in your lungs. Once I got my mirror finish, it was time to paint. It is incredibly important to not take your text block out of your press at any stage of this process. I painted my edges with acrylic ink and worked slowly with the thinnest coats I could manage, allowing it to dry in between. This took me about 40 minutes. Once the ink was completely dry, I took my Renaissance wax and applied a thin, even coat of it with a dry paintbrush. After letting it rest for 30 seconds, I polished it with a scrap of terry cloth. Finally, I burnished it with agate. I don't actually know if this step is necessary, but it just makes me feel better. I know that all of these steps are frankly agonizing, but hey, it's cheaper and easier than gold leaf. It is shockingly hard to stamp in a straight line, so I designed a grid on my silhouette that matched the exact proportions of my tool. To set my text block up for gauffering, I laid down a piece of gold foil and taped it at the ends. Next, I put down my grid and taped it in the same place. I added an extra strip of tape to each side for security. Now it's time to heat the tool. I don't have a finishing stove, so I just use my gas stovetop. Make sure that there is ventilation for safety. I keep the heat medium-low and support my tool with magnets. Every stove is different, so this temperature might not work best for you. After a few minutes of heating up, I gauge my tool's temperature with the sizzle test. Using a wet rag and a bucket, I press my tool against it to hear if it sizzles. A lack of sizzle can mean that it's too cold or burning hot. Now listen again. This sound means that my tool is almost ready to go. I keep cooling it against the rag until it stops hissing. This process usually gets me the best results. Now, I'm just putting a friendly reminder out there. Nobody's above practicing. Please do not go straight for your text block without practicing. I use a thick piece of cardstock to test my tool and figure out the ideal amount of pressure it takes to get a clean impression. I recommend counting how many stamps you can get before your tool cools, so you can know while you're working on your actual text block. When using my tool, I plant it in one spot and gently rock it in 4 directions. Up, down, left, right. If your tool moves or it's too hot, you will get a blurry or doubled image. If it's too cool, it will look patchy or refuse to adhere properly. If it's significantly too hot, it will stick to the foil or even burn right through it. Once I start getting consistently good results, I am ready to begin working on my text block. I usually let my tool reheat for 1 minute and 30 seconds and cool it until it stops sizzling. Every time I reheat my tool, I do a few test stamps on the cardstock again. I have found that my tool usually gets the best results for anywhere between 8 and 12 consecutive stamps. I always count the number of impressions I make and test my tool on the cardstock when I'm feeling nervous. As you can probably tell, I was feeling incredibly nervous for these first few stamps, and my motions look alarmingly violent. I slowly worked my way along the text block, reheating my stamp for another minute and 30 seconds every 8 to 12 impressions. Stamping on a rounded edge can be tricky, so I work as slowly and carefully as I can. Each edge of this particular text block has over 100 spots on the grid to stamp, so it takes quite a while. And here you can see that I continued using my test cardstock up until the very last stamp. And this is what it looks like when a full edge is finished. And after doing the big peel, we can finally take it out of the press. Now, at this point, all of the pages will still be stuck together, so they will need to be cracked. This is the point at which the text block will be at the biggest risk for cracking and flaking, so it is essential that this is done as slowly and gently as possible. Carefully and methodically bend and massage your text block until the pages begin to loosen. I have sped this up significantly because this process often takes me up to 5 minutes. Once you're done, you should be able to flip through the pages of your text block freely without interruption. After that, all that remains is repeating these steps for the other 2 edges. Once you're done, you'll be left with a very beautiful book and probably some mild or major hysteria. If anyone actually attempts this, I would absolutely love to see the results, but I'm just really glad to have a record for myself. Thanks for watching, and happy binding!